My friend, listen very carefully. There are moments in your spiritual journey when you must stop negotiating with darkness and start understanding who you truly are in the spirit. Many people live their entire lives being intimidated by forces that should not even survive around them. They panic at dreams, they react to shadows, and they are frightened by the whispers of the night. But there is a generation rising, men and women, who will not beg for victory, but will walk in the consciousness of the authority they already have. When such people appear, darkness does not advise itself, it flees. There are three things that if you truly understand and practice, no power of darkness will ever casually approach your life again. I am not teaching superstition. I am teaching spiritual intelligence. Darkness is not moved by noise. Darkness is not moved by activity. Darkness is moved by stature, spiritual stature. And stature is not built by accident. Stature is the accumulated expression of discipline, revelation, conviction, and alignment. The first thing you must understand is the mystery of presence, carrying the tangible presence of God, not as a religious idea, but as a living atmosphere. When the presence of God becomes your environment, you become untouchable. Darkness survives on atmosphere. Demonic influence thrives where God's presence is absent or ignored. There are people who move and the atmosphere around them is so spiritually charged that negativity, witchcraft, manipulation, and intimidation cannot coexist with them. When you become a mobile embassy of the presence of God, evil does not debate whether to approach you. It withdraws. To carry this presence, you must become a person of deep and consistent fellowship. I am not talking about a hurried prayer mumbled before bed, nor a mechanical routine that has no substance. I mean fellowship that rewires your spirit, silences your flesh, and aligns your mind. Fellowship that turns your room into a spiritual furnace. Fellowship that turns prayer from a discipline into a longing. When you walk in true fellowship, your very shadow becomes a threat to darkness. That presence creates an environment where witchcraft cannot breathe. You become like a man carrying fire. Anything that touches you must reconsider its decision. Darkness recognizes fire even when men don't. The second thing is the mystery of understanding who you are in Christ. Listen, many believers pray loudly but think weakly. They shout in church but shrink spiritually when confronted by the slightest resistance. They know the language of victory but have not embraced the consciousness of victory. And darkness knows who truly believes what they say. The spirit realm responds to conviction, not repetition. You must understand that identity is a weapon. Your revelation of who you are determines the boundaries of what can happen in and around your life. If you do not know who you are, everything will threaten you. But when your identity becomes clear, when you truly understand that you are seated with Christ, that you are hidden in him, that you are a carrier of his spirit, something changes. You stop approaching situations as a victim. You stop pleading for survival. You stop negotiating with fear. Instead, you begin to decree from a position of stature. When you understand your identity, you become unmanageable for darkness. Witchcraft thrives on ignorance. It manipulates people who don't know the truth. It afflicts people who don't understand their authority. It intimidates people who don't recognize their placement in the spirit. But when you rise with revelation, darkness will never try familiar tricks around you again. You become a being of light, and light has no negotiation with darkness. It dominates it. The third thing is the mystery of purity and consecration. Many people underestimate the power of a clean heart, a disciplined life, and a consecrated spirit. But hear me, purity is a shield. Consecration is armor. Holiness is not just morality, it is a spiritual defense system. Nothing empowers darkness like compromise. Nothing weakens a believer like double living. When your life lacks alignment, you become vulnerable. Your spirit becomes porous. Your atmosphere becomes accessible. But when you choose consecration, when you choose to live differently, to discipline your appetites, to guard your eyes, to purify your motives, your spirit gains weight. you become spiritually heavy. Darkness cannot handle a consecrated man. Evil cannot stand near a pure vessel. There is a clarity, a sharpness, a purity of fire that rests on a person who has refused to bow to the seduction of the world. That purity becomes a spiritual weapon. It becomes a fragrance in the spirit that repels demonic influence. These three things, presence, identity, and consecration, are not suggestions. They are spiritual technologies. They do something to you. They shape you. They build stature within you. They create the kind of person darkness fears. When you practice them, you will stop reacting to evil, and evil will start reacting to you. Imagine carrying such presence that when you wake up in the morning, the forces of darkness that monitored you all night withdraw in fear. Imagine understanding your identity so deeply that intimidation becomes impossible. Imagine being so consecrated that your purity becomes a weapon and temptation loses its power over you. This is the life of spiritual authority. This is the life of dominion. There are people who, when they step into a place, confusion ends. There are people who, when they pray, atmospheres shift. There are people whose lives radiate such spiritual integrity that even those who don't love them cannot deny the power upon them. This is what happens when you embody these three truths. When you carry the presence of God, your life becomes a walking altar. When you understand your identity, your words become decrees. When you walk in consecration, your purity becomes fire. A believer who walks in these realities becomes a danger to darkness. You become the kind of person witches do not want to see. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are illuminated. Darkness does not fear noise, it fears light. And when you live like this, you shine. This is not about becoming confrontational. It is not about attacking people. No, it is about rising in spiritual stature until you become a spiritual environment that darkness cannot survive in. You don't need to chase witches. You don't need to fight people. Just become a person of presence. Become a person of identity. Become a person of consecration. And when you appear, darkness will automatically withdraw. There is a realm where your spiritual life becomes louder than your physical words. There is a realm where your atmosphere speaks for you. There is a realm where your purity intimidates evil. There is a realm where your identity announces you in the spirit. That is the realm God is calling you into. If you truly apply these three things, you will not need to pray fire on anybody. You will not need to beg for safety. You will not need to react to strange dreams. You will become so spiritually fortified that darkness will study you from a distance and decide this one is not a territory we can approach. Rise into stature. Rise into authority. Rise into alignment. These three things will make you a wonder in the spirit. A person darkness avoids, a person witches flee from, a person whose very presence announces victory. And as you walk in these realities, everything around you will begin to testify that you are no longer ordinary. You have become a spiritual force, and nothing in darkness will ever confront you casually again. And as you begin to practice these things daily, something unusual will begin to happen within your inner man. Your sensitivity will heighten. The more you engage God's presence, the more aware you become of spiritual activity around you, both divine and demonic. You will begin to discern atmospheres, conversations, people, and environments with a clarity you never had before. Suddenly, you will know when something is off. You will know when a place is spiritually polluted. You will know when a person carries an influence that is not of God. This is what happens when your spiritual senses come alive. You are no longer a blind believer hoping nothing strange happens to you. You become a watchman who sees before anything arrives. You will also notice that fear begins to die. Fear is a product of darkness. Fear grows where presence is absent. But the moment you cultivate intimacy with God, fear loses its legal grounds. You stop waking up terrified by dreams. You stop panicking over shadows or sounds. You stop interpreting every delay as an attack. Fear melts away in the presence of God like wax before fire. A time will come when even if darkness tries to whisper to you in the night, your spirit will laugh because you know what you carry. Your identity will also begin to transform your speech. Your words will carry weight. Your declarations will carry power. Your prayer life will no longer be empty repetition. It will become governmental. When you speak, things will shift. When you decree, systems will obey. Authority is not noise. Authority is revelation expressed. The moment you understand who you are, the spirit realm begins to respond to your voice. You don't shout because you are afraid. You speak because you know. Even silence becomes powerful when spoken from the place of identity. Consecration will begin to alter your desires. Things that once attracted you will lose their hold. Habits that once changed you will fall off. You will begin to feel an inner conviction guiding your decisions. You will sense when a conversation is unnecessary, when a relationship is unhealthy, when an atmosphere is compromising. That sense becomes a spiritual alarm system that guards your purity. Your heart becomes lighter, your mind becomes sharper, and your spirit becomes taller. When purity fills your life, clarity fills your soul. And the more you walk in purity, the more you attract divine presence. God invests his power in clean vessels, not perfect vessels, clean vessels. Vessels that are yielded, surrendered, sensitive, and aligned. When your life becomes a place where God is honored, his presence becomes more evident. You will begin to experience unusual peace, strange joy, deeper worship, and stronger conviction. These things create a spiritual climate that darkness cannot survive in. Gradually, your life will begin to influence your environment without your intention. People will feel something when they come near you. Some will feel drawn to you. Others will feel uncomfortable. Not because you said anything, but because your atmosphere speaks. Darkness cannot hide around a believer who is burning. And when you burn with presence, identity, and consecration, your life becomes a spiritual furnace that exposes anything that is not aligned with God. You will notice that even in your workplace, in your home, in your interactions, certain people who carry negative energy will begin to avoid you. Spirits, recognize spirits. When a person carries a demonic influence, they will instinctively feel threatened by someone who carries the light of God. They may not understand why. They may not explain it. But something inside them will say, avoid this one. This one is not ordinary. That is what happens when you become spiritually dangerous. Your dreams will also begin to change. Instead of nightmares and manipulations, you begin to receive instructions. Instead of being pursued, you become the one who stands firm. Instead of being oppressed at night, your spirit will rise in authority even while your body sleeps. That is the power of a believer who has built stature. Darkness cannot trespass where light has already conquered. You might think this is far from your current reality, but if you stay consistent, if you keep pursuing intimacy, if you keep renewing your mind with identity, if you keep guarding your purity, you will begin to transform from the inside out. The process is gradual but undeniable. What used to intimidate you will lose its power. What used to scare you will become nothing. What used to confuse you will become clear. And as you journey deeper, you will begin to realize that victory was never meant to be an event. It was meant to be a lifestyle, a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of walking, a way of carrying yourself in the spirit. Victory becomes the air you breathe. Authority becomes the rhythm of your life. Purity becomes your language. Presence becomes your resting place. Stay with this journey. Stay with these practices. Stay with this alignment, because as you continue to grow in these truths, something will keep rising inside you. Something ancient, powerful, and unshakable. A version of you that darkness has always hoped you would never discover. A version of you that carries light, authority, and fire. A version of you that becomes a threat to any power that is not of God. And as this version of you keeps emerging, the way you handle spiritual resistance will begin to change. You will no longer respond to challenges emotionally. You will respond spiritually. You will stop interpreting every difficulty as an attack and start seeing them as platforms to exercise authority. You'll realize that some battles were never meant to destroy you. They were meant to reveal what you carry. Spiritual maturity shifts your perspective. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you begin to declare, this is an opportunity for the power of God to be revealed. Your environment will begin to experience the overflow of your growth. Prayer will no longer be an event you switch on and off. It becomes an atmosphere you carry. Wherever you are, you will sense spiritual alignment. You will begin to notice that your presence brings stability to chaotic situations. When others are confused, you are calm. When others panic, you discern. When others retreat, you stand firm. This is what happens when the fire within you grows hotter than the battles around you. Even your words will undergo transformation. You will no longer speak carelessly because you will understand that your mouth has become a gate of spiritual influence. You will begin to weigh your words, knowing that heaven responds to them. Conversations that drain your spirit will become uncomfortable. Jokes that pollute your atmosphere will lose their appeal. Complaints and gossip will sound foreign to your new nature. Your tongue becomes consecrated. Your speech becomes intentional, and your declarations become prophetic. People around you will start asking questions without you preaching a sermon. They will say, there is something different about you. They will feel the authority. They will sense the purity. They will notice the peace. These are not things you announce. They are realities that announce you. Light does not introduce itself. It simply shines and everything adjusts around it. And as your inner man grows stronger, you will begin to experience boldness you never knew you had. Not arrogance, boldness. There is a difference. Arrogance is loud but empty. Boldness is silent but powerful. Boldness is the quiet confidence that flows from knowing who backs you. It is the assurance that comes from deep fellowship, from revelation, from alignment. It is the boldness that makes you speak to situations without trembling, confront darkness without fear, and navigate life without anxiety. This boldness will begin to affect how you pray. Instead of praying from a place of fear, you will pray from a place of authority. Instead of begging for protection, you will declare divine preservation. Instead of reacting to attacks, you will preempt them by setting spiritual boundaries. Your prayers will no longer be survival-driven. They will be dominion-driven. You will shift from defensive prayer to offensive prayer, where you command territories, speak over seasons, and establish outcomes before they manifest. And as you keep walking in this light, the spirit realm will begin to align with your identity. Angels respond to believers who walk in understanding. You will begin to sense divine assistance in ways you never did before. You will notice divine order, divine timing, divine favor, and divine interventions becoming more consistent. This is not because God just started helping you, but because you finally positioned yourself to recognize and receive His help. You will begin to understand that your spiritual life is not just about avoiding attacks. It is about manifesting the kingdom. When you carry God's presence, you don't just repel darkness. You establish the influence of heaven wherever you go. When you understand your identity, you don't just survive, you govern. When you walk in consecration, you don't just avoid sin, you radiate purity that transforms everything around you. This level of alignment will begin to shift how you dream, how you think, how you plan, and how you perceive yourself. You will start setting higher standards, not because somebody forced you, but because your spirit has outgrown old patterns. You will crave deeper things. You will hunger for encounters. You will desire revelation. Shallow conversations will drain you. Spiritual mediocrity will irritate you. Your heart will long for more of God because your spirit has tasted a superior atmosphere and refuses to settle for less. And with time, you will begin to notice that even your emotional life is changing. Inner turbulence will quiet down. Anxiety will lose its grip. Depression will find no space. Confusion will fade away. Why? Because the presence of God stabilizes the soul. Identity strengthens the mind. Consecration purifies the heart. You become unshakable, not because life stopped happening, but because your roots went deeper. Every dimension of your life begins to align. Your decisions, your relationships, your habits, your focus, your ambitions. You begin to walk like someone who knows where they are going. You begin to live with spiritual intentionality. You begin to carry yourself with the posture of someone who has encountered truth and refuses to return to ignorance. And as this intentional walk becomes your lifestyle, you will begin to notice that certain cycles that once repeated in your life quietly break. Patterns that used to follow you will lose their grip. You will look back one day and realize that the things that used to trouble your sleep no longer have access to your atmosphere. Key doors that once opened to spiritual attacks will begin to shut permanently, not because you fought endlessly, but because your stature increased. Darkness cannot operate where there is no vacuum, and your growth will eliminate every vacuum that once made you vulnerable. You will also start to see a shift in the kind of people who gravitate toward you. Those who love the light will be drawn to you because their spirit recognizes what you carry. Those who thrive in darkness will distance themselves, not because you said anything, but because light exposes hidden things, and exposure is something darkness cannot tolerate. They may not understand why they feel uneasy around you, but their spirits know you are no longer someone they can play with casually. This is spiritual separation, a natural consequence of spiritual growth. Your discernment will also begin to influence your decisions. You will sense when a wrong opportunity is packaged to look right. You will feel a check when a person comes into your life with hidden motives. You will perceive danger before it matures into disaster. Discernment becomes your internal guide, like a spiritual radar that scans everything and filters out what is not aligned with God's purpose for you. You will walk into situations that would have trapped your old self, but now your spirit will whisper, "Not this way," and you will withdraw with clarity. Even your prayer points will refine themselves. You will notice that you pray less about enemies and more about alignment, less about fear and more about purpose, less about survival and more about impact. You begin to pray kingdom prayers, prayers of assignment, prayers of influence, prayers of transformation. Your prayer life graduates from crisis management to destiny establishment. Prayer becomes the steering wheel of your life, not the spare tire. As you continue, your atmosphere, it becomes so spiritually charged that you begin to influence outcomes without verbal engagement. Rooms shift when you enter. Conversations lose power when they are contrary to the will of God. Evil intentions dissolve before they materialize. There is a spiritual echo around your presence, a resonance of light that disturbs darkness. Some people will attempt to challenge you spiritually, but they will find no access point. It is difficult to fight a person who has no open gates. Presence seals the gates. Identity fortifies them. Consecration guards them. Your mindset will also transform. You will stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like someone who carries responsibility. You will no longer approach life as though everything is happening to you. You will approach life knowing that God is working through you. Your thoughts align with Scripture. Your imagination becomes sanctified. You begin to see possibilities where others see limitations. You begin to see solutions where others complain. Your mind becomes an instrument of the Spirit, not a playground for fear. And as your mind changes, your words, actions, and decisions follow. You will start making choices that reflect your spiritual maturity. You won't force doors. You won't compete with people. You won't panic over delays. You won't be intimidated by timelines. You will understand seasons. You will honor process. You will embrace growth. Your life becomes synchronized with divine timing, and everything begins to find its place naturally. People will start to notice this version of you. Calm, steady, spiritually alert, mentally grounded, emotionally stable. They will wonder what changed. They will look for explanations. Some will think it's confidence. Others will assume it's personal growth. But in reality, it is spiritual alignment. It is what happens when presence shapes you, identity anchors you, and consecration protects you. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that what once felt like spiritual warfare was simply an invitation to rise. What once frightened you now becomes your training ground. What once overwhelmed you becomes your testimony. You begin to understand that authority is not just a gift, it is a posture. It is not just something you use. It is something you become. And as you continue walking in these realities, your life becomes a testimony of divine strength without you even trying. And now, as everything you have heard settles in your spirit, hear this final truth. Darkness is never the problem. Ignorance is. Witches, demonic patterns, spiritual attacks. These things thrive where believers remain shallow, distracted, and unaware of who they truly are. But the moment you rise in presence, identity, and consecration, you become a different kind of being. You become someone the enemy fears. You become someone darkness bows to. You become someone the spirit realm recognizes as a carrier of light. This journey is not for the lazy. It is not for those who play with their walk with God. It is for those who decide with conviction that enough is enough, that their lives, their families, their destinies will no longer be playgrounds for darkness. It is for those who choose to rise, those who choose to burn, those who choose to grow, those who choose to live intentionally and walk in spiritual authority. If you embrace these truths, your life will not only be defended, it will become dangerous to darkness. You will not only escape attacks, you will frustrate them. You will not only walk in victory, you will embody it. And every time you appear, whether in your home, your workplace, your relationships, your territory, darkness will recognize you and retreat. This is your call to rise, your call to depth, your call to spiritual maturity. Do these three things and you will not spend your life running from battles. Instead, battles will run from you. Darkness will bow. Witchcraft will break. Fear will die. And your life will become the living proof that light truly shines in darkness. And the darkness cannot comprehend it.